Hi, David.
Hi, Nick.
Hello. Thank you for saying yes to be interviewed today. My
Thanks for having me
my
on
name
the
is
on the
Nicolette.
program.
Thank you so much. My name is Nicolette. I am the creator for the podcast titled You're Worthless. Read that again. The juxtaposition of your very soul. Before we start, I'd like to read a bit of your introduction for our listeners today, and then we can get right into our conversation.
Sounds good.
So, hello everyone. We have David Doss here with us. As the founder of CKC.Fund, a US-based asset management consulting firm, David has successfully navigated the complex world of private investment funds, traditional finance, and blockchain technology. His career journey has taken him through key roles at major institutions like Citi and Saks Fifth Avenue, offering a wealth of experience and insight into the evolving landscape of finance and technology. David offers deep insights into a range of topics, from traditional finance and decentralized finance to crypto investing. He has a keen interest in exploring the impact of digital assets on wealth management and discussing the evolving regulatory landscape for cryptocurrency. Additionally, he is also well versed in the growth and marketing strategies within the blockchain space. Wow, welcome, David.
Thank you again for having me on the show, Nick.
Thank you. So, David, please, before we get right into business, can you share with us what was it like growing up as a David Doss?
Growing up as a David Dawson.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. I mean, for me, what was really important to me has been, I would say, education and lifelong learning combined with connecting with people and community. So connecting people with that sort of thing, kind of mobilizing across the board. I guess in terms of childhood, I grew up in Silicon Valley area in California amid the backdrop of the tech boom and bust in the 90s and early 2000s, and also amid the real estate boom and bust that was kind of happening in kind of separate but related time frame to that. And I also grew up in a pretty international community. From the get-go, I was really interested in technology, innovation, alternative investments, having kind of those things outside of off the beaten path, I guess, but also it was really interested in global which ultimately, in my career has turned into global partnerships, and also really interested in basically wealth creation and wealth preservation, seeing kind of the ways in which, global markets can really impact people's day-to-day lives.
Mm, 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 mm. You're talking about when you say New York and things that you're doing, I imagine you to be those in Wall Street, the brokering, and yeah.
Well,
But
really kind of
uh,
almost the alternatives to Wall Street, alternative
mm,
investments that give people, more and different and better options, where maybe, this can range. One reason why I'm really passionate about the blockchain and digital asset and cryptocurrency sphere in general is that, for more kind of mature markets such as, say, the US, seeing a lot of people who are dissatisfied with the level of growth that they're able to see, in their, in just, buying stocks or bonds in some cases. And then in more emerging markets, seeing people actually have enough, faith to, say, keep their cash in their national currency, with inflation, happening in some countries at, 20, 50% or more, right? So
mhm.
in either case, regardless of kind of market condition, seeing people looking for, ways to kind of have backup plans, ways to have, their money be working kind of harder and smarter for them, so to speak, and basically just looking for those, viable and better alternatives.
Yes, yes. Because not everybody can get through Wall Street, and I guess now that's the reason why we're here right now and I have you on my show. David, tell us, how do you see the role of blockchain and cryptocurrency evolving in the traditional finance sector? And what impact does it have on wealth management in the future?
Yeah, That's an important thing to consider. So in terms of the interrelationship between blockchain and cryptocurrency as an emerging asset class and traditional finance as more kind of the status quo, I think there are a
Mm-hmm.
couple of things to be considering. One of them is the way that that blockchain and cryptocurrency, digital assets can influence the traditional finance space. So there's multiple different ways to be thinking about that, but among others, there is increasingly push to use tokenization in kind of traditional assets management and kind of traditional investing. So tokenizing on the blockchain things like physical real estate or physical gold, these so-called real-world assets, is becoming I think a trend. Beyond that, well, before I go to the beyond that, I guess it's notable to mention that analysts at places like Citi and the World Economic Forum have predicted that the tokenization market is slated to hit somewhere in the trillions of dollars in the next roughly 10 years or so. So that's I think a really big component. The other is basically looking at cryptocurrency specifically. A lot of experts in the traditional finance arena and kind of established frameworks, ranging from modern portfolio theory analysis to surveys of high net worth individuals, research from Forbes, from ARK Invest, are showing this preference to allocate somewhere between 2 and 10% of a portfolio into cryptocurrency, according to a lot of different frameworks. These, that can be more for some people, it can be less for others. But call it, let's say on average, something like 5%. And at that rate, it's something where this is a high potential emerging asset class that has a lot of upside opportunity, but also has some risks. So if this is something that basically where the reward outweighs the risk at that kind of smaller position phase, then that's something where it can help to really smooth out someone's overall portfolio, where a lot of people have more of their assets in stocks, bonds, real estate, things like these. But if they have a small allocation to cryptocurrency, digital assets, in many cases, that can mean that that there's very high proportional returns with fairly low relative risk, that it's not kind of betting the farm on the asset class, so to speak. The other side of things is basically where can the crypto sphere learn from traditional finance, and so this is where I would say it's important to consider that digital assets, crypto, these are at the end of the day, they are assets, and there needs to be some fundamental rules that apply, regulatory frameworks, audits, compliance with national and international laws, these sorts, and basically there needs to be more kind of let's say treating digital assets as special, but special just like any other asset class, where real estate is special, it's different from stocks, right? But at the end of the day, there are still fundamental rules that need to apply, and I think that there's a lot of kind of discipline, risk mitigation, these sorts of things that that the crypto sphere can really learn and grow by by looking to kind of the older siblings in the room in the kind of the traditional finance space.
Yeah. And you said one thing that struck out earlier. You said investing in crypto is, although the percentage is like about 1 to 2% in a portfolio, right? But then you said relatively
2 to 10 in many cases. Yeah.
Sorry, 2 to 10%, and then relatively it's lower risk. Like, can you expand on that? Like, how is that?
Yeah.
How the risk lower? Like, I
So
watched
lower,
the space of Bitcoin before,
right.
but of course right now not so much. But yes, I've seen the.
Right. So that's a good question. So to clarify, well, a couple of things. Firstly, this is not investment advice or tax or
Right.
legal advice.
Of
It's
course.
simply, my experience and opinions based on my 7 going on 8 years in the digital asset space. Beyond that, what I'm talking about is a couple of related principles. Firstly, is that digital assets are showing low to no correlation with a variety of different assets out there. Ranging from major stock, bond, stock indices, bond indices, kind of real estate benchmarks, gold, oil, these sorts of things, where basically, for most people, crypto is only going to be a small part of their overall kind of financial wellness picture, right? But a part that is kind of small but mighty is my point. Where it's something where if the stock portfolio is zigging, then the crypto portfolio often is zagging in a way that can help. Where if one or more of these markets are down, it's something where the crypto portfolio might be stable or might even be up during that time period, and it helps to kind of de-risk the overall financial situation in many cases. The other part is basically that it has asymmetric upside opportunity, where most people, their stock or real estate or bond portfolios are fairly stable in the sense that most of these are not going up 40, 50, 100% a year, right? They're maybe more kind of a couple percent here, a couple percent there, sort of a thing, right? And that stability is very is often a very good thing, especially if it's kind of the majority of the assets. But with something like crypto, there is a lot of volatility, and that volatility is something that can ultimately be a good thing when properly managed and properly kind of prepared around. Where yes, that that, let's call it 5% allocation could have reduce in value by could get 20, 40, even 50% lower in a fairly quick amount of time. In some cases, we've seen that historically in the crypto market. However, there's far more upside than there is downside, and that's where we talk about asymmetric upside, where from X value going down to zero, there's a floor. You can't really, in most cases, you can't really go past zero. Whereas in an emerging asset class, the sky is the limit. So there's limited loss with unlimited gain potential is something that can be basically playing a valuable role when it's in well managed and controlled quantities.
Well, thank you. And I wanted to ask as well, what is your opinion or your view on the trajectory of the crypto regulation in the US?
In the US, yeah, I mean,
Yes, in the US.
Well, there are a whole lot of things to be thinking about and mentioning there, but I'd say one big thing to be considering is that by and large, the US has tended to kind of slowly start regulating, where it kind of leaves the gates open for a while, but then kind of slowly starts kind of making some barriers to entry and kind of some speed bumps. Whereas some other regulatory frameworks, such as say China, historically have been the other way around, where they just kind of in many cases have banned something from the get-go and then slowly opened it up. So it's kind of that on the let's say the US historically, and seen this with things like peer-to-peer lending or various other things, is kind of leave kind of arms wide open, and then eventually kind of
Close, yeah.
Holding on to things a little bit more tightly than initially. Whereas with a regulatory framework like China, it's kind of more like closed fist, slowly opening up into kind of a gentle grasp sort of a thing. I don't think either is necessarily inherently better or worse. I think it's just important to be taking into context that this is not new news in a way, that this is just kind of how certain organizations or certain governing bodies, regulators, have tended historically to operate, and to bear in mind that that's that there's a context for it and kind of cultural, economic, political context for these things. But beyond that, I mean, we're certainly in kind of, I would say, I'm cautiously optimistic in terms of, just on a personal opinion level, in terms of U.S. regulatory frameworks because of, recent ETF approvals for, Bitcoin ETF, Ethereum ETF, these sorts of things. However, those are, I'd say, very big pieces of news. But there are, various things here and there that have been maybe, more problematic or more concerning for the industry in the U.S. It's, I'd say, a mix, but net, I think it's headed in a positive direction. I hope that can be, as smooth and as efficient a way to head in that direction as possible.
Because I've been interviewing guests that are on the Web3 space as well, and this crypto is popping up like mushroom. So I am also excited to see where this is going. And thank you for that, David. So
Absolutely.
can you share, I think you spoke about this earlier. What is your approach to diversifying investment portfolios with digital assets and the strategies you recommend for investors in uncertain economic climate?
Yeah, so the strategies can be, different depending on, on people's goals. It's ultimately, that can be very kind of person to person and institution to institution type of question. But broadly speaking, I would say that proper diversification can often be key. And what I mean by proper is, there's more to diversification than just picking a whole lot of things, right? It's a question of, how many of those things at what timing and which of those things. So, in a space like digital asset space, there are, well, let's play a guessing game, I guess. How many cryptocurrencies do you think there are out there right now?
Oh my God. The last time I paid attention to this space was back in 2018. So I don't know right now. I don't know, this is just a rough figure. 100,000 types of.
So I mean, you guessed higher than a lot of people do. So it's about 25,000 of the actual kind of fungible cryptocurrencies.
Yes,
but then
fungible.
if you do count things like tokenized real world assets, what would some others be? Like security tokens, NFTs, et cetera, then it probably is a little bit closer to your estimate. But yeah, so I mean, to that point, there's no way that that most people are going to be buying 25,000 different anything, be it, I don't know, varieties of apples or, just anything at all, right? I don't have, 25,000 of much different things, right? Personally,
Yeah.
any that I can come to mind are, other than money basically, but from a distinct, I definitely don't have 25,000 different currencies.
Yes.
That would, there aren't even that many, fiat currencies in the world anywhere near close to that. But yeah, so I mean, to that point, it's a question of the issues are a couple. One is that just blindly picking, let's say, a handful of those can ultimately not really be that great of a decision in many cases. The other is that often a lot of those assets are just trailing Bitcoin. So some of them are just perfectly following Bitcoin.
Exactly.
So then if you have, 30 different things, but at the end of the day, they're all behaving exactly the same, then you don't really have
You're
a
not
diversified
diversifying.
portfolio, right? So that's another consideration. And then the beyond that, the diversification by various parameters, much like is something that that we as a management team like to look at is diversification across market cap, high cap, mid cap, low cap, diversification across use case. Much like in the stock market, there's healthcare versus technology versus industrials, things like this. In the digital asset space, there's let's say smart contract platforms, decentralized file storage, artificial intelligence, stores of value, transactionable currencies, various. So those are other considerations to be bearing in mind as well.
Mm. Well, thank you. Given your experience in with corporate development and growth marketing, how can blockchain projects effectively market themselves in a crowded industry?
Yeah, it's an interesting question for a couple of reasons. I mean, one, I think that there's almost a specifically as regards blockchain as a, let's say, blockchain services. Bless you.
Thank
Um,
you.
specifically as regards blockchain services, as opposed to cryptocurrency. At the end of the day, blockchain is a database. If you have a database, it should be serving a purpose. The analogy I like to use is, there are no one I know of goes out and lists in their marketing materials that they have the latest PostgreSQL database or whatever in kind of the regular world. But then a lot of people go out and say, oh, we're using the latest and greatest in blockchain technology as part of it. And so at the end of it, I guess the point being that it has a job to do. So some of the more kind of, let's say, especially more kind of consumer oriented, but also business oriented blockchain services I've seen that I really admire the marketing of have really just talked about what it can do for you as the user, as the consumer, as the client, without mentioning the word blockchain at all. And that's ultimately,
Yeah.
if it's something
Mm.
that genuinely is a better mousetrap, then the user, the client, consumer doesn't really care, why in most cases, at least not in kind of huge detail. They just care that it's actually, helping them do what they need to do in their
Mm.
lives, their careers. So that's one thing. Another would be in terms of blockchain and digital assets and marketing. There's, I think there's been a lot of kind of gambling type of behavior and mentality in the space from a lot of organizations, kind of insinuating or else flat outright telling people that like they're gonna 10x their money in overnight or whatever, these sorts of things, and just kind of catering to people's FOMO. And
Yeah.
I think that's really kind of left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths, where kind of coming in and being more precise, and not making promises that you can't keep, is, I think, something. And also, especially when it comes to digital assets and crypto, encouraging the level of kind of seriousness and kind of circumspection that people would take with other asset classes, other investments. I think that's also a really important thing that we're starting to see a bit more of in this space as well.
Okay. There was a glitch earlier. Okay. Well, thank you for that, David.
Yeah, sure.
So, in your work with CKC Fund, what are
Mm,
some of the most successful strategies you've employed to drive business growth and profitability?
yeah. So, I mean, in terms of what we do as as a fund management team, we are focused on we're focused on fundamental and technical analysis, really just evaluating assets, what has strong potential, what's also going to fit well into the broader puzzle piece of of the positions that we uh, that we are uh, that we are in at any given point. So that's one key area. Beyond that, staying in alert on what's going on in the world in general, but also in the digital asset space in specific. So, when the market is shifting, what we often look to do as fund managers is to rebalance into other positions. I mean, if there are, let's say, vertical specific issues like decentralized finance is having a lot of problems, we might move out of that into another kind of subsector of the space. Or if there is broader if there's broader let's say long-term potential in the market, we might kind of expand the number of positions that we have, these sorts of things. but also thinking through how do how do things like global events, conflicts, good news, bad news, etc. How is that likely to affect what we're doing? Is I think another part of things as well.
Thank you. I know we spoke about the crypto regulations. How can investors and businesses stay compliant to these regulations that we talk about while innovating?
Yeah, that's a very important question. Um, talk with your regulators, talk with your compliance people, talk with your lawyers.
Mm,
I think also it is tricky, right? Because I think a lot of entrepreneurship, there's kind of this mentality of move fast and break things, but
yes.
when it involves money and specifically other people's money, I
Mm,
think that comes with some heavy caveats, basically, right? So
mm,
yeah, I mean, I think that basically, uh, being things are always evolving, right? But I think that it is really important to be on the one hand trying to keep in touch or keep up to speed with what's going on, and then also to really work with the right tax, legal, accounting professionals to make sure that that you have to kind of help you.
everything is accounted for.
No, exactly, exactly.
Right. Okay. There was, I think in not in this introduction, but introduction in Podmatch, there was a
Mm,
mention on the intersection of blockchain's impact on real estate. What do you mean by
mm.
this? How are we integrating blockchain into real estate?
Yeah, it's an interesting development. I think that's in the space. There's a lot of components, but in my view, two of the main ones are real asset tokenization
Mm.
and transacting in real estate with cryptocurrency. So to be
Oh,
able
so you buy a
to
house with
exactly. Exactly.
mm,
So to be able to do that, for example, cross-border between countries without having to go, historically with a lot of trading pairs for foreign exchange for fiat currencies, there's been, what they call kind of like three-legged transactions where, let's say, I mean, I'm making up the exact details, but it gives you kind of a general example. A path that could happen is if you're, going between um, let's say the let's say going between Japan and I don't know
mm,
India on
mm-hmm,
trade, it might be that you're actually sending yen to then be exchanged for dollars, which are then being exchanged for rupees or
mm-hmm.
something like this, and it takes a long time. There's a lot of fees associated with it, all of that kind of
Ah,
stuff.
I get what you're
And so
saying. That
being
it's
able
if
to,
it's just
yeah,
digital asset like
exactly,
crypto, it's
exactly. So,
nothing. Yeah.
yeah, and then there's also very simple proof that the assets are there from the perspective of, there's a public ledger, these
Yes.
sorts of things
Yes.
where, someone trying to do, especially like a cross-border real estate transaction using fiat
Mm-hmm.
currency, there's all sorts of things like, charging back the wire or like,
Charges,
all kinds of,
fees, whatever
weird
not.
things like that. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so that's one general area, and then the other is the the real asset tokenization that ultimately I think that's something people have been especially interested in lately with just interest rates being so high and kind of markets being uncertain is uh, if you have a way to move in and out of a real estate position where you have exposure to the real estate market, but it's in a way where you can, buy and sell that exposure much more, in theory, much more quickly than buying and selling a house, and also at lower amounts where you can, sell part of it and not all of it and hold on to some, that sort of liquidity and also, in certain cases, fungibility is I think also really interesting. And I think real estate is going to be one of the big ones because it's just one of the biggest asset classes in the world in general, right? So it's also fairly, let's say, kind of fairly behind the curve in terms of innovation. So I think there are a lot of places where that's ripe for disruption.
Mm.
I guess I mentioned that there are two areas, but while I was talking, I thought of the third one that I find is quite interesting, and that's blockchain-based land titles. So there are a lot of parts of the world where title disputes on a property are very common, and so when that's happening, basically, it erodes investor confidence that you're not sure if you buy a property, is it actually going to be yours, or is someone going to sue you and take it away from you, that sort of stuff. And
Yeah.
in a lot of emerging markets, the title system is not really up to speed. And there's certain countries where the likelihood of a title dispute is as high as 20 or 30%. So if you're
Yes.
kind of just like rolling the dice on, is there going to be dispute on this place? So if you have a public ledger, with that information, that could really help, especially in emerging markets that may not have kind of as much access to that title information.
Mm, no, you certainly have helped me understand better into how can blockchain help on real estate and the, how do I say this, application of it.
Mm.
The fees definitely, and the land title, because w- I don't know, not gonna name any specific country, but it happens. You have disputes over. In fact, the place that I'm in right now, the land title hasn't been released for the last 10 years, 7
Oh,
years,
wow.
because it's tied to a master title, and then some parts of the land or the building,
Mm.
it's been built and operating as a hotel, but the occupancy rate is really low, so they have some issues there. So it is
Right.
really apparent. Well, it's interesting to see how this blockchain can
Yeah,
help and propel that in the future.
absolutely.
So David, what is next for you?
What is next? Let's
Yes.
see. Really, we're growing, the assets under management of our fund management team. We're also, exploring strategies that we can add into, either separate vehicles or incorporate into existing things that we're doing. We're also looking to basically provide additional support around things like real world assets. Basically, we're developing functionalities for our fund management team to manage tokenized real world assets, as well as to help with the tokenization, the real world asset tokenization process. And we're also basically building, at the end of the day, building a community where we participate in events and forums and think tanks around the world, notably in Davos each January, and
Oh.
so in Switzerland. And so
Mm-hmm.
we're really just looking to be an educational resource where we can help, basically bring more credibility to the space and help more people through what this space has to offer. And so that's, it ultimately come down to more offerings, more and better offerings in more places to more kinds of people.
Thank you. Wow. Okay. So my podcast talks a lot about self-worth. So I'd like to ask some questions to my guests for the benefit of my listeners as well, to give them like a holistic view of the guest, both from the perspective of the career and themselves. So I have a question in regards to self-worth. So in your opinion, David, how do you personally define self-worth, and what practices or habits have you found effective in maintaining a healthy sense of it?
So to me, self-worth is, as I think, recognizing talents can meet the needs out there in the world, and where that can align with purpose, and recognizing that I may not be able to do anything I want, or I may not be able to do everything I want, at least not all at once, right? But if I do have a clear appreciation for what areas of myself I can most contribute to benefit others in my life, personally, professionally, and if that fits into a broader purpose, then that's something where I feel that is worthy. I think it also boils down to self-worth boils down to mental health and habit formation, kind of a little bit at a time. I know I read recently, I'm a huge reader. I read at least a book a week on average.
Wow.
And I just recently read this book called Learned Optimism that I thought that was a very interesting way of looking at self-worth in terms of basically the mental frameworks that you have learned, either consciously or unconsciously throughout your life, and what parts of that need to be relearned in order to properly basically be living your values and living in a way that's helpful to your life and to other people. And then yeah, I mean, I think that beyond that, the kind of habits, other habits, I guess, would be, for me, I think sleep is very important. That if I'm not kind to my body, then and my mind, then they're not going to be giving me and other people in my life what are needed from them, and so kind of respecting that in order to have something worthwhile going on, you need to kind of put in the rest and the recovery is, I think, important. Also, I'm huge into kind of biohacking and things like this, of just kind of trying to optimize parts of my life, ranging from diet and exercise to fasting at I kind of the right place and the right time to let's say just kind of optimizing even when I'm doing certain things, such as when I'm working or when I'm relaxing, when I'm eating, when I'm sleeping. I think that also plays a huge role in just kind of there's the kind of feedback loop of on the one hand, mental kind of fortitude, mental strength is super important, but if you are constantly eroding that by mistreating your body, then it makes it hard.
Defeats the purpose. What is your heart's greatest wish?
Wow, my heart's greatest wish. My heart's greatest wish is to live up to as much of the potential that I know that I have in a way that can really benefit me, as well as can benefit most importantly everyone else in my life, ranging from friends and family to colleagues, clients, customers. To really just maximize the time that I have on this earth and be able to kind of look back on that with pride.
Thank you. Do you have a mantra that you live by?
So, well, there are a couple. One that I really like is it's kind of a paraphrase of a Russian kind of saying. Basically, is nothing is for nothing. That a lot of people I know will say everything happens for a reason, but I feel like that has kind of become co-opted to become, in some cases, kind of a bit trite or kind of cliche. But to me, nothing is for nothing. Kind of it acknowledges that stuff happens, and that stuff is not always great, right? But that you can kind of it acknowledges that there are lemons out there in the world, but it also acknowledges that even those lemons can be turned into lemonade. And I think that's an important thing that's been for me to bear in mind. The other kind of favorite saying is, if it's common sense, make it into common practice, where a lot of us know what it is we should be doing, or in our personal, professional, etc. arenas, but we still don't do it. And it's one thing to kind of know things in here, and it's another thing to kind of be living them.
Put it into action.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Is there anything that keeps you up at night, or do you sleep well?
Boy, well, I would say I work hard on being able to sleep well, kind of in general, and that has many meanings, ranging from I guess, conscience level to stress levels.
Mm.
Yeah, I think being able to know there's a time and a place for everything is I think important to me in terms of the stress part of sleeping well, and then being able to be doing what I'm convinced is the right thing to be doing is kind of I guess the conscience part of it.
Thank you. So, David, if you could create a quote right now for you to leave to the audience listening and the world as your legacy, what would it be?
Oh my gosh, wow. Well, that's no pressure, huh?
I get that
So
a lot from my guests.
yeah, yeah. Oh well, let's see. I mean, um, I think it may not be particularly a quote, but at least just kind of a message to be thinking through is basically I think a lot of what we've been talking about is context and paying attention to context being everything. That
Mm.
that's kind of been the theme to me, ranging from what we've been talking about digital assets and cryptocurrency to to let's say work and health and all of these sorts of things that really things are very very situation specific, but also basically there can be a right time to be really just going for it is what I would say.
Thank you. Wow. Wow. And there you have it, guys. Hang on. Before that, how can people reach out to you, David?
Yeah, so I am pretty active on LinkedIn, and also CKC, my team, my company are pretty active on LinkedIn as well. So you could follow me there, send me a message there if you'd like, or also follow CKC there. You can also can reach out to me via email. It's David@CKC.Fund. And beyond that, also my team mentioning that I publish a newsletter which you can subscribe to on LinkedIn, or if you want to send me your email address, it also get added there. So I mean, like I mentioned, really passionate about education and community, and I'm happy to help support people to learn more about things that I'm doing, ways that I can be of help to them.
Thank you. And there you have it, guys. You heard it from the person himself, David Doss. Before we close off, David, personally, I'd like to thank you for the work that you're doing for the world and for advancing every step of the way despite the challenges, creating trails for those that will come after you. For our listeners, this has been that one podcast with that controversial name, You're Worthless. Read that again. The juxtaposition of your very soul. If you find yourself thinking that you are worthless, well, likely you're not alone, but more importantly, ask yourself a level deeper. If I am worthless, then why the heck am I here? It is because your soul have chosen to be here energetically, all the way from the ethers, and for that reason itself, you are worthy and you are enough. This has been David Doss, your guest of the day, and Nick Niaras, your host, signing off. Thank you, David.